Well, as we're sitting here at LTV on this beautiful morning, actually afternoon, Thursday afternoon, August 24th, year 2023, here at the Hello Hello Show. And my name is Haim Mizrahi, continuing with the tradition of public access and the tradition of the Hello Hello Show that's been on the air since 1980. Oh yeah, that's better. Since 1980. And of course, not to fail to mention the contribution by Fraser Dougherty, Francis Ann. Yeah, it's working. And the likes of you out there that's making it your business to enhance and fortify the concept of public access. Of course, that goes without saying that indeed this stage is available, and this stage is, I dare say, solid, fortified, and in more ways than one, inspirational, and it proves itself every time. Every time there is an attempt and an act of evaluation on the basis of just plain, simple, straightforward desire, and of course they meet their answers in the shape of what we experience here every day at LTV, and with us. This afternoon, Steve Romm was willing to be generous and grant us with
No, I never
his
left
presence.
from the last show.
What's that?
I've been here since the last show. I just never left.
Yeah, I noticed that. so I was like, okay, let me see. Is that good? And say something? No?
Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Well, I don't know. This is not it. But anyway, looks funny anyway. So, we talked earlier about how many establishments are cutting a check for you just so you don't show your face. What's the going fee?
It's easier to go into a restaurant and tell them that their food is horrendous, and they'll pay you not to come back because you threatened to go on air and just, mention their horrendous food and their exorbitant prices for their horrendous food. So they'll say, what would it cost us for you not to tell people about our fine cuisine? So it turns out that you make more money not going out to dinner than if you went out to dinner.
Don't mind me, I'm just trying to make you look good.
That's long gone. So we're here. I think it's Thursday. Is it Thursday? It's Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday, almost the end of August. Can you believe that?
And for some bizarre reason, July was very hot. The rest of the country's in the midst of a heat spell still. And here, it's going down into the 50s at night and 70s during the day. It's like summer's over and it's fall. Tomorrow's supposed to be heavy rain, wind, thunder, and into Saturday. So I've noticed, because the phones have beach cams on them, the beaches have not been crowded this year, which is very strange. I don't understand it. I don't know where all the people on the highways are going.
I love it how you generalize everything, just because you went one afternoon and didn't see enough people there, then...
No, it's not one afternoon. I spend most of my days just watching the beaches because there's not much else to do.
Oh, so you're telling me the truth now, so...
Would I lie to you?
Whenever you say I have a doctor's appointment,
yes,
you have an appointment to go to, like, Atlantic Beach. Come on, tell me about your appointments.
I will say that the concerts at Main Beach have been really crowded, and I do thank East Hampton for doing something that is good for the people. Since they've raised our taxes, the least they can do is put on a concert. And
someone will get back to you.
Oh, I'm sure.
And it won't be in the shape of a check. It will be in the shape of a raise for property tax or something.
It already is.
It already is, huh? Oh boy.
So,
So, so the nature of your journey as an artist, with all the fluctuations and everything, and in between you can include the contribution that you gave me by allowing for me to consider you as my mentor, and and I thank you for that because I mean, are you aware that when someone says you're my mentor,
I realize the
and
significance of that.
no,
I'm not.
but not really for real now. I'm
No, I
saying
mean for
this.
real. I really do appreciate the the position that you've put me in and responsibility that you've put me in. Um, but I take it willingly and I enjoy it. And I would not do it for 99% of the people I know because it would be a total waste of time. And I know because I've seen your work change, and hence,
It's mainly the attitude more than the work.
well, your attitude has changed. If you're talking about you,
Artistic attitude, yeah.
it's changed, and I would phrase it as someone who has taken their craft more seriously than ever with the desire to grow in the process of creating art.
Yeah, you can say that again. Yes, that's pretty
And I think
accurate.
that pretty much sums it up.
Yeah, I know, and you know, and therefore, and because of it, and I did mention you today in a conversation with one of the um, people here, and so I had a chance to hear myself talking about this, what we were just talking about you being a mentor. I decided that you have a room in my life to be a mentor. You decide that you're actually willing to do that because it's not a given that someone just becomes your mentor or just volunteers advice. Um,
There's also a responsibility to
yeah,
it.
of course, but also because you know we live in an environment where, especially artists, you know, you talk about something you do, they want to copy you. If you're stupid enough to show them access to your studio, then sure enough, they the other day I don't know, I didn't invent. It was someone that worked with me, did some work at the house, and most of my work is in the garage there. So when we were, he saw it and he said, "Oh, this I can do this." So I looked at him and I said, "Oh my God, who's this guy?" I said, "No, no, you cannot. Okay, out." He said, "No, no, I can't. You want me to?" I said, "Out, out." You know, something like that, like ridiculous, upsetting. So he sealed his faith with me. You know what I
Look, when
This
I
is the
first
last time I will ever have him
right,
where it is or close to it of what I'm doing. I will not exchange anything with him. I will not discuss anything with him regarding art. And for me, the attitude changed to that in any of what I do is not his business.
I had the same thing happen to me years ago when I first started doing the landscapes with the very low horizon, all sky. Somebody I know out here who's an artist who does not do landscapes the way I did landscapes. Suddenly, I go to a gallery and their paintings are there, and guess what? All of their new paintings have really low horizon lines, all sky, and a cloud. I thought it was my work. It wasn't. So my conversation with that person, which had been pleasant beforehand, just rather than saying something or getting involved in an argument or a discussion or anything, just ceased to exist. So I guess you have to take it as a compliment that if somebody is copying your work, you just let it go. Because
Yeah, no,
actually, the reality is that
I
whoever was attempting to do what you did, or the
yes,
person who
yes,
did what I did,
and it's not in our hands.
didn't even come close.
Of course, but that's not even. I'm not even going there. It's just the idea of. I just feel dirty when I'm in the company of people who wants to talk to me about, for example, a famous artist that I had a conversation with. I mentioned a few times that he's more than welcome to come to my studio, and then the last time that I spoke with him, he said, he tells me, you know that when and if I come to your studio, I steal everything I can from you. Like this. But so I thought it was a joke. I said, I'm not going to mention names. I said, what? Like, he said, no, I mean it. I mean it. I come to your studio, I look at everything. I look at every possibility to copy and to adapt and to borrow and this and all that. So I looked at him. I said to myself, "My God, he's serious. He's serious. It's like amazing." So I turned and I said, "No, you won't, because you're never gonna see my studio in your life." Thanks for the warning.
It's a really sad comment that whoever this person was needs to go someplace to steal ideas.
I didn't want to tell him
in order to paint.
That it makes sense for him to do that, because his work sucks so much.
That would have been my comment.
Yes.
You can't come up with something on your own.
Yeah, like exactly.
So,
and the last painting that I saw of yours really summed it all up for me. Like, man, this guy really needs help. So how about if I just gonna give you a few tips, and you don't have to visit the studio and steal things. I'm just going to provide you with some.
Let me just write out all the things I do, and so I'll email it to you so that you have directions on how to paint. Since obviously you have no concept how to paint, nor have you ever had a concept how to paint, and you only get by stealing things. So can I recommend a couple of other artist studios that you should go to?
Oh boy, that's funny.
And maybe when you get done, you'll have some clue as to what to do with paint. Obviously, right now, the most you can do with it is play with it. You can't do anything.
You know, speaking of paint, all this, lately I'm experiencing the wonder of paint's avalanche. You know, I know it sounds a little confusing, but I remember in the period where I would just kind of let the paint go travel on its own behalf, but not necessarily just putting paint and letting it drip. But the fact, because you splatter and drip, there was a period when I was heavily involved in it. I still am to a certain degree. But now I take like 3 to 4 months breaks in between kind of paintings when it comes to drip, because this is the only way to maintain the quality of it, you know, and to
don't forget to tell him that.
Yeah.
Tell him that he's got to take breaks.
Yeah, but
and he can come over to your studio and steal more stuff in between.
Yes, but the thing is, the thing is, at least on my list, I know he's out.
Right.
He's out. He just sealed his faith. He tried to be. He thought that he's so good that if he was to say that to any artist, there would be no comment. There would be, fine, come, steal whatever you want. But here it's like I put an end to it right away. But the thing is, with the avalanche, that spells success. You know, the avalanche is the paint. How do you say, caving in on itself or something, like when it loses the base and it's crashing into. How do you say? There's a way to say it in English.
I'm trying to think of a proper way to say it.
Yeah, there's a saying anyway. So the paint is actually collapsing. Yes,
right,
collapsing on itself. So the fact now that the paint doesn't just travel because the law of physics, you know, you put on a flatter, surface and then you tilt it on to 90 degrees. And then of course even if it's not liquid as liquid, it will still drip, it will still run slower, less, but it will. And of course with real liquid it will run, and it will run fast or whatever it is. But this lately, because I'm allowing it to happen in other ways, in other mediums, the mix of the two, I realize that it's collapsing on itself.
Right.
So that means as it runs down, the quantity of it in certain stage is also turning. So it's not just like straight because
Right.
And then I realized the paint is trying to tell me that I need to manipulate. It's a journey. It's time not to just like say,
You want to control it.
yeah, or
I mean, you are the person in charge,
yes,
not the paint.
yes, control it into what degree and why and which direction. All this took me a while to realize it until I realized, because every time I was trying to do it before I revealed that was why why can why can I not do it? It felt like every time I'm reaching, okay, let's maybe tilt the canvas now when this evolution is halfway through, and then let it go, this way and then that way and this way and that way, which I know how to do, and I did a lot, and I didn't seem to be able to do it. Didn't seem to really want to do it. So I felt like until I realized that. So it's almost planet Earth that's going around the sun. So it's turning around the sun, and then it's turning around its axle at the same time. So there's some message that you get that actually maybe this is a time that we're reaching a level where we can connect with entities or something above ourselves, whatever the nature will be, and therefore we have to change and bring it to a point where it will still be compatible with a higher knowledge, with higher, more sophisticated reality. So I realized the avalanche that revealed me something caused another avalanche of thoughts. So now the point is, what am I going to do with this knowledge?
Well,
and not that it's a question, I just wonder, kind of.
I think that there's you have a personal relationship with the painting that you're working on at the moment. You're the person who applies the paint. You're the person who has the concept as to what it's doing. Yet in the process of doing that, sometimes the paint doesn't react, or whatever the material is that you're using, doesn't react exactly the way you think it's going to react. And it does something different. And you learn from that. And you go, wow, I didn't expect that to happen. That's great. I love it. Or it can be terrible, and you go, I'm not going to do that again. But you can learn from the experience of doing something with the material you're working with, and then you incorporate that into your painting. When I first started out with the metallics and my glazes and everything, I only had 4 colors. And building that up was like 5 layers, and it looked really nice. And I thought, well, maybe next time I do a painting, I'll use 15 or 20 colors. And it grew. And I started seeing things that I had never seen before. The more layers I built up, and it finally got to the point where I was literally using gallons of glaze on a canvas because I was putting on hundreds of layers in order to get the look and texture. And I hadn't, in the early days, texture wasn't part of the painting. But it became part of the painting, really an important part of the painting, as the layers kept building up and building up. And people would look at it, and they would see the texture, they would see the different colors and different lights. So it took on a life of its own, something that I learned from the painting how to use. Just a quick story as an aside, because you were talking about somebody coming into your studio. When I first started publishing, and we became very successful at it.
Is that going to be a long story or
moderate?
We're talking about a couple of minutes or about 10 minutes?
No, I'll make it short. I was approached by an artist in the city who wanted to be the next Warhol. So he said, you got to come up to my studio and see my paintings. And I said, fine. Went up to the studio, and he had no names. He had about 30 people sitting on the floor, each with a canvas, doing what he told them to do. He hadn't touched anything. He was just directing everybody. And he really wanted to be the next Warhol. And he thought this was the way to do it. Turn out 30 paintings at once, and then he'd sign it.
Or do a final manipulation that he could.
Or just do something at the very end.
Yes.
And he said, will you publish my posters? And I said, absolutely not.
Why would you say no?
He said, why? I said, A, they're not yours. They belong to the people that are doing the paintings.
Yeah, but he gave, what does it account for even when he gave the instructions?
The problem was that they really were terrible. It wasn't Warhol.
But let's put Warhol aside and let's put the need to rate them aside.
It's really simple. When
the question to be asked, if he wasn't to put it together, would it happen? No, would it happen?
No.
That means that means you wouldn't have 30 paintings. They won't come out of anywhere. And so what happens that he thought about it, he put it together in his head, he took action and called people and he informed them or hired them, whatever. He's overlooking what they're doing, and then he's finalizing it, then he's signing it. That's a lot.
Except for the end result. The end result was he literally disappeared. Nobody went for it. People understood what was happening.
You mean the end result, it being in the market and not selling?
His approaching the market with what he was doing did not translate into, for him, sales, gallery shows, marketing, etc. It was more of a con game than anything else, and I just recently saw on the phone, on an auction, one of his works, and the price was like $200. Basically nothing. Not even worth the canvas that was stretched on.
So why does he need to call it names like Warhol or not Warhol? I mean, he could have done the same and prevail even more.
Because his intent was, his initial concept was that he wanted to be the next Warhol. Now, Warhol also had a studio, and he had a lot of people working for him. But the intelligence that went into it, the concepts that went into it from Warhol, something as simple as the Campbell's soup can was brilliant. And the work that he produced.
Yeah, but when he first started, he didn't have anyone do the work for him. He worked really hard. He painted a lot. And then when he got to a point where his vision had to be supported by these changes. Look, so when you're a genius, as genius as Warhol was, then you can only imagine the results. And the results, as we know it, are great.
The first art expo I ever did in New York, I think it was 81. Warhol was in our booth. He was one of our artists, and he did a poster, and we sold the poster. And we did okay with it. It was nothing that people were lining up for. And I think from that point on, he started expanding his career, and he became Warhol, which is basically a legend, and we know the value of his work and the kind of things. How old was
he when he...
I don't know what age he died at. I should know my art history a little better, but he was a lot younger. He was really getting started, and I liked his work, and I liked his concepts. And talking with him was really interesting because he knew what he was talking about. And however he...
Yeah, he died in 87.
And how old was he?
He was 60, he was 59.
Okay, so he was young.
Yeah.
He died in 87?
Yes.
So he was in our booth in 81.
So in 81, he was like 43.
Okay.
No, 53.
53.
Yes.
Well, that seems like a kid these days in perspective to where I'm at. But I liked what he was saying.
But don't forget that he was a film director also. There's a lot of things. It's not...
Warhol, in his own way, was a genius in what he did because he was the first one to do it. He was the one that did movies. He did a lot of different things. And, just as Picasso was Picasso, Dali was Dali, Warhol is Warhol. There hasn't been another
What's
Warhol.
What's common to all of them? One thing. Let's start with that. Let's see.
I would say their ingenuity and the creativeness to be the first doing what they did.
Yes, but what's actually actualizing it and officializing it? What? It's something that
it's not necessarily
obviously.
Well, they were all successful, but that's not the,
Yeah, but
that's not the common bond.
That's after the fact. What's common and what's common in common?
They were all inventors of their art form that was different from everybody else.
No, that's not what I'm looking for. They all, first of all, were hard workers, meaning that they would take de Kooning, for example, or even Jackson Pollock, for as little as he did in terms of time. He really painted a lot. He really, when he spent time in the studio, he spent time in the studio. And he spent time in the studio even when he didn't spend time in the studio. Always thought about the studio. Where de Kooning was a slave to reality in his studio. And I mean, if you think about Warhol was a workaholic. And he perceived that as work, and he was willing to invest the time and to be there way beyond what was needed even. But the thing is that the initiation, the planning, the execution, the goodwill, the whole idea of hands-on is what brought a lot of people that you must agree with me that's just as talented or potentially have what it takes to be leaders, to be inventors, to be, individuals that people will follow them and people would learn from them.
But there was also something drastically different.
But all it took is for one little thing to go wrong, and unfortunately they find themselves in a different route, and then they realize it's too late, and maybe it's not too late, but it is too late, and they're getting nowhere and all this. Mind you, all these people that we can discuss, this half dozen tycoons, great individuals in the last 100 years, they were also very lucky. At some point,
they also had something that we don't have out here. They all got together socially and discussed their art between them. And in the process of doing that, it stimulates your creativity because you're talking to other people who are in the same field that you're in, who are as successful or as creative as you are. And it's like pushing a button. And they
did
all
you just do that?
I just did that. Your favorite thing.
No, my favorite thing is this, not this.
So I remember my next door neighbor saying to me, he remembers being at I think it was the Chelsea Hotel in the city, and he said he would go down there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and there were all the artists that you mentioned drinking at 8 o'clock in the morning. Breakfast was what they had to drink.
Yeah.
And they would all talk about their art, what they were doing, and then they'd all go to their studios. But they were all getting together, and in essence, they were all lighting a flame under each other's butt to go and work. There's none of that out here. It would be so great if you got half a dozen artists together on a regular basis, and they said to you, I had a breakthrough last week. I did something that was different. What it does is it triggers your creative juices to go home and stand in front of your canvas and work.
Not that they really needed it.
Yeah, but it was part of their lives.
It was more about knowing about one another. Listen, like for example,
it was a creative
if
part
there was
of the
a group
creative
of
process.
dozen, let's say a group of a dozen sculptors and artists and maybe 20 people, each one knew about the other, exactly where they stand, exactly how much they already accomplished. The mutual respect came on the basis of, I'm not going to mess and be disrespectful to this guy because I know about him or her for that sake.
There was none of the concept of anybody walking into your studio and saying, I'm going to steal this. They weren't interested in that.
No, of course. They were too busy in trying to figure out their medium.
Right.
No, of course, no. But the thing is, I had that feeling. I mean, I don't want to compare myself with any master and all this. I might end up being a master. I feel like if I'm going to have enough years on planet Earth, maybe I will succeed. And it's not it will be as a result of that. Maybe I'll be successful and sell paintings so I can live out of my paintings.
I'll give you an example.
But that's not. But that's not the point. The point was that I experienced that in the past, where I was told by some people that that we became friends, and and they approached me and said, "Do you remember? It wasn't always that we liked you. You remember that? Yeah, we didn't just start as friends and all this." And what do you think was? What do you think was that which brought the change? And then we said, "Okay, we want to be his friend."
I think that what was really important, as an example of what I'm talking about, is when Lenore used to have her shows with artists, um, and people would bring their work in and discuss their work, and sitting at the table were a whole bunch of other artists listening to what somebody, you would bring your painting in, I'd bring my painting in, whoever it was brought their work in, whatever it was, and there was it was a real artist dinner. And that's who was there. It wasn't real estate, it wasn't anything else. And you sort of left the dinner table afterwards and you thought, I learned something tonight. I really like what so and so is doing. I have to go home and do something that I'm doing. It's not copying somebody else. But it just, when you're in a group of people who are discussing what you all have in common, it triggers those emotions just enough that your incentive to go home and work, go to your studio and work, is
Yes.
a little bit stronger
Yeah.
than it was beforehand.
And take it one step further and see those gatherings. And those gatherings did not rely on empty reservoir of recollections, experiences, memories, and whatnot, and just pure knowledge. On the contrary, it was based wholly on the fact that they knew who's sitting across from them. They knew this person that's sitting across from them, what his achievements are, what is the level of his craftsmanship and his paintings. They remember his last show. They remember his
Right.
new pieces. So the thing is that first and foremost, there was something that's just like unconditionally there that demanded respect, mutual respect and regard. And upon that, and on the account of that, and on the basis of that, friendships formed, artistic friendships.
Right.
And they say, so these people, apropos, just to finish my story, they said, we came to your art shows. Before that, there was just like the people said, "Oh, Haim Mizrahi," and all. They said, "Nah," they dismissed me, whatever. And then they said, when we introduced ourselves to a few of your shows, we realized that it will put us in a very ridiculous light if we were to do anything other than respect you. Now, that's a nice thing to hear from someone, correct?
You also have to remember that when we had art shows, other artists would show up to those art shows because they were interested in what you were doing. They were interested in the creative process. I can't think of an art show out here that I've been to or an opening that I've been to in years because I'm not in touch with anybody. Nobody reaches out anymore.
Except mine, yeah. Please.
Except yours. and I have to tell you, I love these art shows.
Yes.
I think that, this is something that's off the beaten path, is creative, has good artists, and I think,
and good curation.
you put it together, and I give you credit for putting something together that didn't exist. Those walls were just there.
Yes.
They're not just there anymore.
Yes.
And the shows that I have been into, in the galleries that I've been to, pales in comparison to what's here.
Yes.
And I think the only thing that's missing from here is somehow getting the it's easy access to here, is just getting people aware.
But that's
period.
That's exactly what I'm trying to communicate with you. Just imagine, okay, let's say I had the idea, whatever, there's heritage, there's years and years of showing artists in this wonderful space. There's the thoughts, there's the action, there's the planning, there's the phone calls, there's the planning, there's the phone call, there's the curation, there's the just do all that. Just imagine if the other entity would take it as seriously as I do and invest their time in promoting these shows, because there's a limit to how much one can do anyway. But
Right.
The thing, regardless of that, going back to that which I in stages telling you the whole story, Um, so we felt ridiculous if we were to be stupid enough to attempt to decipher or to maybe hope to come to a conclusion that you're a loser or what we saw wasn't fit to be considered as art. We knew that. We could have done that, but we knew that. We knew this is ridiculous. And it will make us look ridiculous and make us feel ridiculous. So what happens is that between these people of the era of 100 years, there was unconditional mutual respect that is based on one knows about the other. They know where they stand. They know their work ethics. They know their talent. They know their goodwill, their inspiration, his or their desire of one another. They leave no room but to respect and maybe humbly suggest something or being more than happy to share and to volunteer information if needed and all this. But you will never hear them say, that last piece of yours was great or the last show was a knockout. They know about it. They know. And the proof to it is that they were sitting together in the same place and smoking cigarettes like maniacs, like suicidal, and drinking this and coffee and alcohol.
That doesn't exist
No,
anymore.
but yeah, and I wish, you know what, I quit smoking many years ago, but I would be willing to sit with some heavy-duty patrons and smoke a pack of cigarettes.
If people got together, whether it's a restaurant or somebody's house or whatever it is, and you had 6 or 8 artists sitting around a table, and you've got, the best way I could describe it is you've got everything here that you need for a major successful art show, and the only thing missing is communicating that so that when you open your doors on the night that the show opens, that 100 people show up. That's the only thing that's missing. The quality of the art is here. The display is here. The setup is here. Everything's here. The artists are here. The work is here. Somehow, it's got to get out, and there's got to be a way to do it so that the public becomes aware that this exists. And as soon as that happens, the transition of it being just a local art show at LTV to being a really, really good art show that's comparable to any gallery out here, and with an assortment of artists that are at the top of their field, and a variety of artists that you can't get when you go to whatever gallery it is here. Everything's here. You're curating it, the way you're putting it together, the way you hang it is as good as any gallery that you can walk into any place out here. So the only thing, and it takes time, and I have to tell you, the galleries that I've been to out here, that exist out here on an opening night, they're not crowded. People are just not turning out. There's an ad on.
Yeah, but I don't even want to go there. I want to stay within the discussion.
There's an ad right now,
Yeah.
and I got hit with it on my phone the other day. There's a new company that got started. They're in New York City, and they're publishing prints, and they're asking $3,900.
Okay, do you really want to go there?
Yeah.
No, I'll tell you what. Because on the account of that, we're not going to talk about topics that I want to talk about. Because this is...
I'll make it short.
Yeah, okay. So no, but okay, he's trying to say that the copies for $3,900. He understands what they're doing, and which is so self-explanatory. It's not a big deal, and he can do it and sell it for $300-400. But what does that mean? It doesn't matter what I want to talk to you about, because you're not here every day.
Okay.
And,
I can be.
Yeah, right. Yeah, of course. Yeah, no problems. Consider it done.
I'll sleep here.
Yeah, and so I want to take advantage of it. And even though I'm a little disappointed, with all due respect, that you're not, but don't, this is not an accusation. This is just like earning the right to be your friend and to tell you, hey, listen, what are you thinking? Exactly, okay? Yeah, you can tell me about doctor's appointments or feeling this and that and whatever, but I know what you're made out of. I know. So I'm kind of hoping, still hoping, by the way. See, I spoke in present tense. I didn't say I hoped. I'm hoping that it's almost like wishful thinking to see. Okay, what can bring you more joy than seeing the master in at work? You know what I mean? Really, for real. And I know that if you were to decide, you're one of the few people that can just immediately live implement changes that will actually literally like a chain reaction change everything, the entire process that you're accustomed to, and therefore will produce different paintings. I know that. You don't even have to mean to create new paintings. Say, okay, I'm going to knowingly change from this to that in order to get from that to this. It will just happen just because of your uh, few technical acts that will you put in place knowingly. But it's almost as if I feel like because you're so unknowingly overwhelmed, because you know what you're capable of, and maybe the incentive is not there. But when I speak of an incentive, when it comes to you, it's not the usual incentive that one would think. It's more like your psyche, your moods, your state of mind, your, you know, things that are that usually will support a change like this are actually taking you the other way. But in the same token, the one painting that you create a year is extremely exciting.
Well, I'm in the midst of doing another one right now. I did one for your show, and I have to say, I'm actually pleased with the fact that it was terrible. Because I usually don't turn out terrible work. I usually like what I turn out. I put it aside, but I didn't throw it away because I'm going to go back to it, redo it. Actually, what happened, it's really interesting. I didn't, I mean, my thing is skies. And I looked at the sky and it just was not right. And the other day I was driving home and I looked at the sky and I said, that's what's missing. I had to look at nature, at the real sky, and say, that's what's missing in my painting. I didn't get that. Now I know what it is. So I can change the painting and it'll work. I'm doing a big abstract right now. Half of it, it's got a curve to it. The left side is done. Now I have to do the right side. It's just the way I work in certain ways. And I'm kind of excited about it because A, it's got to go with the other painting that I did, which I love. I don't know how, it happens. It's not always planned. It develops as it's working. The painting has a life, as you know, paintings have a life of their own. You see something in the painting that you didn't intend to put there, you see it in the painting, you go with it, and all of a sudden you step back and you look at it and you go, wow, however that got there, it's great. I love what happened. I didn't plan it, but it came out right. So I'm going to follow through and do some more of that. That's what's happening with this new painting. And sort of in the back of my mind, having listened to Ad Reinhardt when I was in college, who does these huge black paintings or white paintings, and they're made of squares, and each square is just a slightly different black than the one next. I mean, hard to tell. If you look at the canvas, it looks like it's all black or all white, but it's not. And you have to understand, if you listen to him or you read about him, what the man knows how to paint. He can paint like Rembrandt if he wanted to. But his concept was, how far can I take the ultimate concept of painting and minimalize it to the nth degree? And that's what he came up with. So it's an intellectual pursuit that he went to. So this painting, this abstract, half of it is in blacks, half of it is in whites. So, but it's a reflection. Each side reflects the other side, but in reverse, which is really hard to do. It's a struggle, but it's fun, because if you look at red on the left side, what's the opposite of red? Put green in. put blue in. So you really have to be aware of what you've accomplished on the left side, which is basically done. Now you have the right side, which is, it's like a negative. You have to reverse everything. So if you have a blue line, what's opposite blue? If your background is black, the other side is white, but it's not really white. So it's a challenge for me to do what I set out to do and make the other side succeed as well as the left side. So it's fun. And hopefully when it gets done, for me, it's as good as the last abstract that I did. And then I don't know if I'll do any more abstracts after that. I don't know what's next. And that's always the challenge.
I won't hold my breath,
I'm not done painting.
Yeah, no, I know you're not, but I'm just joking. But what about pleading with the surface? Remember the era of pleading where we were like actually hearing ourselves out loud, talking to the surface, so to speak. And
a canvas. The big landscape in the living room that you've seen with the clouds. I used to walk into the studio in the morning with my paints all set up, and I would look at the canvas, and the first thing I would say to it, you are not in charge here. It's my painting, not you. You have a conversation with the painting. You have a conversation with what's happening because it's all in your head. You want to control what's happening, and I had lost control. The painting was getting what it wanted.
But what
it took
happened,
me 7 skies to get the one I wanted.
What happened to, speaking of opposites, you just mentioned opposites by way of creating half and half. What happens to buying the cheapest paint, the cheapest brushes, and to working directly from the tube and really expediting the process, if only because you just want to get it done, and you want to be able to put second and third coat within 5 to 10 to 15 minutes.
I didn't learn that way.
No. But what I'm talking about, we had this conversation before. I think that the first reaction I got to my paintings in 1997 was like, oh, working directly from the tube. It was actually an insult. I didn't know it then. It was an insult. It was an insult. And then until my friend approached me and said, you know what they're trying to tell you? They're telling you that, this is not acceptable when you work directly from the tube. And acceptable, what does that mean, acceptable? For me, it was more like, it's more like you're upsetting me with words while you're forgetting that I'm a poet, kind of thing. You know what I mean?
But there's a starting point that everybody has.
No, but I can understand. I could understand and relate to it after the fact. Yeah, I understood that. But my thing was that early on, lucky for me, I realized that I need to find a way, technically speaking, to expedite the process without compromising quality. And then, of course, that served me as a guide throughout, and to a certain degree still does. I utilized my knowledge as a house painter with 50 years almost of experience, and knowing not only paint, but knowing the evolutionary process of that change in the quality, in the science of paint, industrial, commercial, all this. And thank God I reached the point where I don't have to ever worry about paint. I have more paint than I need for 60 years. I'm not kidding you. I have more paint than I know what to do with. And so this is like, I always think about Jackson Pollock. There was like, couldn't wait for the day they would have $80 then to buy that can of red paint that he loved so much. And sometimes he couldn't start or finish a painting without having this red. And this red was almost $100 then in the late 40s. Insanity.
Maybe you should come over and do our entire house, like one of your paintings.
Yeah. Are you talking to me?
Do you see anybody else in the room?
Yes. When you're here, I see more than one person in front of me.
Can you imagine my neighbors looking at the house and saying, wait a minute. It's not blue, and it's not gray, and it's not black, and it's not white.
If you give me a week, If you give me a week,
You
I
can paint
can
the whole house
whole
like you're
house.
painting.
About 10 layers, 10
Yeah.
applications.
Trim and everything.
Oh yeah, landscape and everything.
Right. My neighbors will pay me more than my house is worth to repaint it, which you will get the job to repaint it
Yes.
over your painting. And I'll say, Haim, my neighbors have put together $5 million, which my house isn't worth, to paint it white.
To paint it white. There you go. But early on, I realized, oh my God, I'm so old. Then I was like 37, 38. Like, I'm so freaking old to start. Really, I felt like I've had no background, no art education, no, nothing official. Not that it really bothered me because my desire was stronger than all this blah blah. But still, we live in a society and in a community like we did. Everyone and his uncle is a painter, and actually pretty good painters around. They're not all just losers.
Right.
So intimidation, without anyone intimidating me even. It's just there, hanging, and it can't go away because it's everywhere. So I really needed to introduce power that I already have. Whether it has something to do with it or not. So I always said, how can I transfer this? Let's say I come to your house and I give you an estimate. And I need 40-foot ladders and whatnot, very demanding. Even without, in your house, you need 32-foot ladders. and then do I ever say, oh no, this is I don't want to do it. I can't do it. Never in 40 years in the Hamptons that I came to a job, well, some of them were very challenging, but I never, ever, not even once, got close to being overwhelmed or to be intimidated to say, I don't know how to relate to this. No, on the spot. So I found a way to take this kind of attitude where, and the owner, for example, would not look at me and realize what I'm going through. He wouldn't realize anything because he's asking for an estimate and I'm giving him one. And most of them happen to have some knowledge about these things, and they said, your price seems to be right. Sounds right. So, and that's like after 5 minutes, while usually painters will call 3 days later. Oh, I'll email you the estimate. And here's a guy that's giving them an intelligent estimate proposal in 5 minutes with a price that brings like it's normal. Took it to art, and in art was more like, you kept me so busy with this whole project that you left me no time to criticize your work. This is what I found myself facing, where I was and in the early on stages, you had tons of suggestions, tons of points of references and directions, and were very well taken. And taken to heart and of course doing something about it and whatnot. But you introduce that sense of strength and power that it's just kind of containing that potential up to no good criticism that you don't really need. I mean, you need criticism. How many people do you know personally that can give you a constructive, intelligent criticism?
It's very. I'm just thinking. The comparison between the two of us is that you started painting at a certain age without any previous background in art. To me, what is important is the end result. I started at the age of 7, and I had a very traditional.
3 minutes, by the way.
Okay, I had a very traditional background in art. We both paint very differently. I think what's most important is the end result. It's what hangs on the wall, not how you got there. Because with the background that I had, with the teachers that I had, with all the colleges that I went through, with all the art courses I went through, all people see is what's hanging on the wall. They don't know my background unless they read about it. When I look at Dennis Lawrence's work, I don't know his background. I don't know how much education he has or where he learned or whatever it is. I only look at his painting, And that's what I have to judge.
Yes.
When I look at your painting, if I didn't know you, I would look at your painting. I would see the changes that have taken place over the years. And I would say, here's somebody that's growing, changing, working at his craft. It is a craft. And I think that's the most important part. I mean, can we stack up both of our backgrounds and say the person with the most training wins? No.
No, the combination would be awesome, but just for a lack of time and enough time, I wanted to. Sorry, that I have to cut you short. I wanted to thank my guest, Steve Romm. Always a pleasure to have him here. As we're sitting in the afternoon of Thursday, August 24th, year 2023, here at LTV with the Hello Hello show, and we're going to be here tomorrow as much as we were here yesterday, and as much as we're here again this afternoon, Thursday afternoon, August 24th, year 2023. We still have the group art show, this new one, until we hang the next show until this coming Monday, Tuesday. I think it's the 28th, the 29th, but it's ongoing. And again, Steve, I really wanted to thank you. And it's a joy to spend time with you.
And it's always a pleasure.
And I hope you're gonna leave me alone for about a week after we spend 1 hour
Not
together.
a chance. Not a chance.
So in that sense, we'll.
One of my goals in life is to harass you.
And you're doing a great job. Okay, thank you, Steve. Until next time, which I hope not be too long
soon.
from now. Yes, sooner than soon. Keep up the good spirits. We're approaching Labor Day, so be kind. You know, these next 2 weeks are very precious, and we hope for you to enjoy it and to prevail and to be happy. And again, thank you to my guest, Steve Romm. We'll talk to you soon.